Welcome to A Voice and Beyond. We have the most delightful guest today. We have Cristina Ramirez. How are you, Cristina?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to be speaking to you today because we've had a little chat prior to the interview starting, and we're both very open books. And I know that you have a great story to share, and you're willing to be open and vulnerable, which is what I love about my guests when they come on here, that they do feel that they can speak freely. And that's so important because sometimes what we have to share can make such a big difference to someone else's life, and people don't have to feel that they're going through stuff alone.
Right. It's funny because when I first wrote my book, I shared a lot of stories. And when it was printed and I was going to send it out to people, I was like, oh my God, everybody's going to know all these things. And the way I
Mm,
got over that, I was like, well, if it helps one person out there not to feel like they're the only ones with this issue or they're the only ones with this experience, then so be it. That it'll be worth putting myself out there for that.
that's a great attitude to have. And I wish other people were like that rather than feeling shame or feeling embarrassed or whatever it is that they feel about opening up about their lives. If more people did that, I think then other people wouldn't feel like they're walking this earth on their own.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Christina, I'm going to introduce you. And there's a lot here, people. Batten down the hatches. You are a motivational speaker, an award winning coach, and best selling author of the book Empowered by Discomfort, which you have there. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, Christina just flashed her book. There we have it again. And you call yourself a serial entrepreneur. Your program focuses on discomfort being a pathway to confidence, and your curricula has been implemented across 41 states, and I'm assuming in the US.
Yes.
Yes, and taught to over 10,000 individuals, from children to corporate executives. You are also, there's more, you are also a veteran of Wall Street and Silicon Valley, as well as a snowboard national silver medalist. Okay, is there anything you don't do?
There's lots that I don't do, but I did those things, so that's always good.
That's amazing. Okay, tell us about who is Christina? What
Well,
what has been your journey that has led you to do all of these things?
yeah, I think I grew up overseas. So my parents are Cubans, but I was born and raised in Brazil. And then I lived in Northern Africa. I lived in Morocco as a teenager.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I lived in a lot of different places in the US. And then my company in Silicon Valley transferred me to Chile, to Santiago de Chile. So I've traveled a lot and I've lived in a lot of places. And I feel like I just take in the experiences that are in front of me. So if I lived in Florida and I was in the ocean, then I would do ocean things. And now that I live in New Mexico, I live in a ski town. I ski, I snowboard. So I think it's just life has presented me all different kinds of opportunities to try different things. And I'm just grateful that I actually do try them.
What a great attitude to have.
Mm.
Yes, I mean, a lot of people, I suppose life is all about you have to either you sink or swim, or you
Yes.
embrace life, or you curl up in a fetal position somewhere and sob.
Yeah.
And you
And
clearly made that choice that you're going to embrace whatever it is that life throws at you. So then, did you make the choice to leave? What was your job at Wall Street and what were you doing in Silicon Valley? Did you make the choice to leave that?
I did. I was very young. So
Mm.
I on if you knew me from before, you would have understood that like, well, what are you doing on Wall Street? Like I am not, I'm not I wasn't a great fit. But what happened is that I was in college and I told my parents, it's like, I know what I want to do. I'm going to be a teacher. And when I said that, they're like, okay, well, then you're quitting college and you're going to a community college, because I was going to this, it's called Wellesley College in the US. It's a very prestigious school, and they were paying for it. And they said that they weren't going to pay if I was just going to be, if I was quote unquote, just going to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I believed them.
Yes.
And when you're in college here in the US, different companies come to the schools to recruit you. And it just so happened that in the investment, that investment banks came, and I just kind of went with the flow. So there I was on Wall Street. Silicon Valley was a better fit for me. And what I noticed, though, looking back in hindsight, is that even on Wall Street and on Silicon Valley, I was the go-to person when someone had to communicate something. So I was in mergers and acquisitions for Latin America, and then I was in technology sales for Latin America. And when they had to tell the story of the company that we were trying to buy or sell, or when it was time to launch a new product, I was the person that they would go to kind of educate people, to say, is like, okay, well, we can dissect it this way, so we can present it this way, so it's going to be digestible for people. So the whole time I was teaching, I was just teaching in these weird environments.
Wow. Okay. So when did you transition to doing all this work as a motivational speaker, as a coach? What happened? At what point did you go, no more Silicon Valley?
Yeah. So that was way back in 98 in Chile. And what I did instead is I started a nonprofit to take at the time there wasn't a lot of digital infrastructure. The internet was just being born. So I wanted to take technology to underserved communities in remote areas. So I started a nonprofit to do that. And that nonprofit still exists today, and it has trained, I don't know how many tens of thousands of Chileans, because it's been
Incredible.
a long time. But I was very young. I had a lot of responsibility, and I didn't know how to handle it. So I had a lot of anxiety, and a doctor prescribed to me an anti-anxiety medication, which I 100% abused from the first day.
You
Um,
abused
yes.
what
So
you took more than you were meant to.
So I was a drug addict, and it got so bad that I was suicidal. I've had my stomach pumped more than one time,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I came back to the US to a mental institution. And it was the kind of place that if to smoke a cigarette, which at the time, I was a big chain smoker, you had to, it was like a burner on the wall, and the burner had a metal grate on top of it, and there was a little hole that was big enough for your cigarette but not big enough for you to stick your finger. And I belonged to there because I was a girl that I was going to stick my finger. Like, I was in a really bad place. But what I realized, and it's like this whole long story, but at one point I realized that, I'm not dying. I'm not an idiot. If I really, really wanted to die, I would have. But
Mm.
what I understood is, like, I didn't want to die. I just wanted to stop feeling the way that I was feeling. And I
And what
didn't
was
know
that?
how.
What was that feeling?
It was, I can go back to that, Christina, with a lot of compassion, right? Because that was over 20 years ago. I've been sober for 20 years,
Yes.
so that's
Yes.
not me. But at that time, I felt like I was a failure because, and this is good, it sounds like so immature and stupid, but that was what I was at that
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
But I grew up with the thought that, like, a woman can never be happy without a man. Like, my role in life was to get married and have kids. And here I was, 30 something, yet another boyfriend dumped me. And I was thinking I was never going to be happy because, like, my friends were getting married and I was not. And so I felt that that meant that there was something wrong with me.
And can I say that I totally get that? And it's a cultural thing.
Hmm.
I totally get it because I come from an Italian background and we were raised as women to be someone's wife and to be a mother.
Exactly.
So I totally get it. And by the time you were in your late teens, they would start asking if you had a boyfriend. Then once you
Mm-hmm.
had a boyfriend, when are you getting engaged? Once you're engaged, when are you getting married? When are you going to have kids? It was like when. And it was all expectations that other people were putting on you and that pressure that you felt from a cultural perspective. So to have been that age in your 30s, unmarried, that would have been like you would have felt like you had let everyone down. So
Exactly.
I do understand. I totally empathize with that.
Yeah, and it didn't matter how successful I was on the outside because I was very successful in my bit, in my working world, but it was just this really big hole inside of me thinking like the way I used to talk to myself, like I would never speak to anybody like that. But
Mm.
somehow I thought it was okay for me to do that to myself, So I was very unkind. But I realized, okay, I'm not dying. And if I'm going to live, I need to learn how to be happy because I don't want to do this anymore. Like it's very painful to be in that much distress and pain all the time. And I started learning and I started listening. I went to a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous, really saved my life. And instead of thinking like, well, I didn't do that and I didn't do that and I didn't do that, I just started listening. And when I started listening, I started getting the words that I didn't have about how I was feeling. And once I had the words to express myself,
Mhm.
then I could change it, right? Then I could do something about it.
Mhm.
And again, this was 2003. Yeah. So it was 20 years ago, but that got me on the journey of where I am today.
That's incredible. It's very interesting though, in that story, you use the word that you started listening.
Mhm.
However, you say that you had your stomach pumped numerous times. Clearly, you were the one that you were wanting people to listen to you.
Mm, yes.
Like to me, that is a cry for help. You said you didn't want to die, and you knew that. You made that choice. You could have, but you
Hmm.
chose not to. But obviously, you were crying and screaming for help. Did you feel that people weren't listening to you, that they didn't understand? Like, could people not see that there was something clearly wrong?
I don't know if they could. Towards the end, 100%, because I was a walking zombie. Like just one look at me and you know that there was something wrong. But I did want to be. I felt unseen, right? I felt like there is this successful Christina in the business world, like out there, but behind, like it was like, but there's somebody else here that so it's every time that somebody hurts themselves, it's usually a cry for help.
I
And I
agree.
want, you know, but at the same time, there's a saying that's like you're an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, right? And
Okay.
that was me because I was so like self-centered that I like you could try to help me and I'd be like, no, you don't know anything, and I wouldn't listen to them because like what would they know? Like they don't know me or they don't know my story, and so I wouldn't, like when people would try to help me, I was really obnoxious and annoying to them
Uh,
because I would think that they would never understand me. And
Okay.
it wasn't until people who had been in addiction that's why it was so important for them to give me the words to what I was feeling, because I didn't have those words. And when I started understanding, it's like I'm not the only one that feels this way.
Mhm.
There's millions of people that feel this way. And I started like, well, and they look happy, so maybe if I listen to them and I learn from them, then I have a chance to be happy too. And that's exactly what I did.
So, was there anything that the people who were closest to you could have said or done, talking to that egocentric person at that time?
I don't think so.
Why then was it when you went and had professional help? Why did they? Obviously, they're skilled, but also they're not the people that are closest to you. You're not emotionally attached to those people. You don't have that wall up.
And the years of stories and like, well, do you remember that you did this to me when yada yada yada? Like, you don't have that history with them.
Yes.
But what's interesting, Marisa, is that they weren't professional people, the ones that helped me. The ones that
Really.
helped me were just common people like you and I who just had been through what I had been through.
And they're the
So,
people that gave you the words.
yes.
What were
And
those words, Cristina?
so it was I remember my first meeting. It was this guy, like there's a speaker that comes and shares their story with you. And it was some guy from Georgia here in the US. And he talks like this, and I can't even do the Southern accent. So forgive me, anybody out there.
I don't understand the Georgian accent either. One, they speak way too fast, and
Yes.
two, the accent is way too heavy.
Yeah. So it was a guy like this big, who sat there. And I remember him telling a story that I guess like he came home late one night and he went and he woke up all his kids because now it was the time that he wanted, like he was ready for them to
Mhm,
have play, even though it was like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And there was something in that story that I related to,
mhm,
that it's like, well, but it's my time. Like I want things to be done in my time, even if it's 5 o'clock, like completely inconvenient for anybody else. It doesn't matter because now I'm ready
mhm.
and here I am. And that's why it's like that egomaniac with the
Yes,
inferiority complex, like,
yes.
So those are the stories. I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody does that too. Like somebody feels that way. Like I thought I was the only one. Little things like that over the years and over hundreds and hundreds of
All right, we have a little dog. That's okay.
yeah, okay.
We are pet friendly on A Voice and
So
Beyond.
thank you. I apologize for that. But when you go to a meeting after a meeting and you hear story after story, you start connecting the dots and you start identifying, you start picking the things from this person and from that person that are experiences that you had. And as long as you're opening to listening to them, they're going to give you the words. They're going to show you. And they're going to give you the words, and also you knowing that you're not alone, you're not that different. And there's hope, right? There's hope
Yes,
that the way that you feel right now is not the same way that you're going to feel in a month, in 3 months, in 10 years.
yes. It's so important to have that mindset. And this is something that I try and tell myself when I feel like there's a massive obstacle or a challenge in front of me. And it's what I say to my kids and to people that I know when they're going through a hard time. And it's to say, this is just a moment in time.
Mhm.
And I love when it's something that I've picked up from my US colleagues, this too shall pass. And
Yes.
it's true. And, you know, my first husband committed suicide. So
Uh,
so I know the difference between a cry for help and when someone's serious about it, because there was no cry for help. It was a first
oh,
attempt and it was the final attempt. And I, I just think to myself, it was a moment in time. Life, it's just a moment in time. If you can just get through this moment, get through this moment, get to the next moment, get through that. And then you've gotten through this much time. It's just one foot in front of the other. Sometimes in life, you just have to inch your way forward, don't you? It's
yeah,
don't try and take these big leaps, just inch, 1 inch at a time is enough
exactly.
on some days. And it is true what you're saying.
Yeah. And also that, when things are good, that keeps you humble because it's like like things are good right now. Let me enjoy this moment. And when things are down, that
Mm,
same thought gives you hope because you know that there's going to be an up again. And there's ups and downs all through
yes,
life. And
yes.
what I try to teach people is like, so how do you just face it, not even keeled, because then you don't feel the emotion, like, and it's fun to feel elated, but how do you face those challenges from a completely different point, from a place of confidence, from a place of knowing it's like, I'm going to show up for this challenge. And on the other side of this really sucky situation is going to be joy again, you know?
Yes.
And I tried to share, like my husband also passed away, you know, about under 2 years ago from
Oh,
cancer.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But it's the same thing, right? It's like I couldn't breathe when this happened. Like I couldn't, I would fall on the I've never felt such enormous pain in my
Mm,
life. But there was this little light inside of me that just said, like, hang on, we've been here before. Like I've thought my life was over before. This is, and as painful as it was, because he really truly was the love of my life,
yes.
I knew there was going to be a different feeling. Maybe it was going to take a while to get there, and it took a while to get there,
Mm.
but I knew that it was going to come.
Grief is, I mean, it is so messed up. It is such
Yes.
a journey, isn't it? And it's
Yes.
such a messed up journey because you don't know what you're going to feel day by day. There's such a roller coaster of emotions. And you don't know when you wake up, like, what is today going to be? Is it going to be anger? Is it going to be sadness? Is it going to be frustration? Like, it's just, there's just so much going on. But
Yep.
you've been through all these incredible things in your life, insurmountable challenges. What drew you to creating this program and to writing your book, Empowered by Discomfort? Because I tell you what, if anyone's felt discomfort, it sounds like you have.
Yeah. We all have, though. And just like it's just in different at different levels. Um, what led me to write it, it was, when my husband was in the ICU, he was there for 11 days and then he asked to be taken off life support. And instead of like, I just wrote on Facebook, this is what's going on, and this is the journey. And everybody kept telling me. And then throughout my first year as a widow, I'd be like, it's been 1 month, it's been 2 months. Like, I didn't know this, but now I know that. Like, I was just sharing for me more than anything else, but I shared it on Facebook. And a lot of people kept telling me, it's like, you should write a book, you should write a book. But I didn't want to write a grief book and I didn't want to write a memoir. I wanted to write something that was more universal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started writing my story, but the tools that I used to get through what was clearly the worst year of my life. And it's the same tools that I have been teaching for years. And so the book kind of morphed into part storytelling and memoir, but part self-help. And it's like a nice, easy blend of the two.
How do you define empowerment? What does empowerment mean? Or to feel empowered? What does that
Yeah,
mean for you?
I love that question. Empowered just means that for me, empowered and confidence kind of go together for me. And it just means that I know that I will show up. I will.
Mm.
And I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I'm going to make a mistake. I don't know, but none of that matters because I know that there's enough in me that is going to show up to the situation. And that is empowered.
Well, then, if that's the case, I am empowered also.
Wonderful. It's great. It's the ability, it's like
It's
life is
showing
going to
up.
happen. Yeah,
It
life
is.
is going to happen,
It
and
is. Yes.
there's always going to be challenges, and your challenges and my challenges may be similar or maybe
Mm,
completely different. And
mm.
maybe we're victims of circumstance, um, but what are you going to do? So
Yeah.
empowered, it's
Yes.
showing up
Yes.
regardless.
Yes. I love that. So, what are some of the concepts that you share throughout your book?
Sure. So I share this thing called the power wheel,
Mm,
which helped me so much. And it starts like this, like thoughts. I work
yes.
a lot with kids, and when work with the little ones, especially, I tell us like, look, as a mom, I can control everything about your life. I've got power. I can control what you wear, where you go to school, what you have for dinner. I cannot, there's only one thing that I can't control, and that's what you think. And when I tell
Mm,
them that, they're like, oh, but if you think about it, like that's real power. I can
yes.
influence you, I can persuade you, but I can't make you think something. So if we start owning that power, that's already a huge step. And the same thing with the words. Words are just our thoughts expressed, right? But nobody can make me say something. They can't physically move my mouth. Like if I move my mouth and I say something, it's because I'm doing it, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yes.
it's like, so that's power. That's a lot of power. And we take that for granted. We say like, oh no, well, I have to do this. Why? Says who? You know?
Mm, hmm.
And then the stories, the thoughts that you think over and over again, because I think we have like 60,000 thoughts a day,
Yes.
90% of which are repetitive, right?
And
So
and 80% of those are negative.
I know, isn't that weird? So like
It's
we
so
do this to
we
ourselves.
we are so messed up as humans.
Yes, I know. So that's why people like you, it's sharing different, our message is important. Um, so the stories that you repeat over and over again are your beliefs, and your
Yes.
beliefs are either given to you from the outside, like, okay, if your parent, my parents were Catholic, I was raised a Catholic, so I have that belief, or I had that belief. But belief are the gatekeepers, and it's either going to help you take an action or it's going to prevent you from taking an action. But beliefs are just thoughts that you repeat. So believe you can change that, and that's where the work is. But so if you take an action, you're going to have a result, and that result is going to reinforce that thought. So I'll give you an example. If somebody says, like, I'm really good at my job. That's what they think. And so when they're speaking, is like, oh, I do this, and like I work in this industry, and they talk about it, they stand like this. So their belief is, I'm good at what I do. And because I'm good at what I do, then I can do things that maybe other people can't do. So maybe I go to my boss and I say, hey, I'll take this extra job because I can handle it. Like I'll take this extra responsibility. So I do that, and my boss notices and he gives me a promotion. That's going to be the result. And then
Mhm,
it's going to reinforce the thought, like, I'm good at what I do.
mhm.
And you're spinning in a positive. Same thing can go in a negative. Oh my God, I'm such a dumbass. Or I'm not good at math. And because, and it's like, well, I can't even calculate the tip at a restaurant. I mean, what am I kidding? So maybe I don't go into engineering, even though that sounds like something that it might be interesting, but like, I mean, who am I kidding? Like I'm not good at math. So it's going to hold me back from pursuing that degree. So then the result is going to be that I'm going to be working in something that maybe isn't what I really wanted to do because I just
Mhm,
thought I wasn't good enough to know that. And it's going to
mhm.
reinforce the fact it's like, well, I'm kind of a dumbass. I'm not good at math.
Okay, I get that. I get that. And you know what? Okay, I'm getting slightly excited here. You can tell when I blah my words, which I'm doing right now. So I'm struggling at the moment with something, and my self-talk around this thing is negative. So I've been asked to write or contribute a chapter to an academic textbook. And I haven't written in academic speak for 4 or 5 years, 4 years. And I that doesn't come naturally to me. Did you hear that language? Speak working and writing in academically does not come naturally to me. I can speak for as long as you want me to on pretty much a lot of things, but when it comes to writing and grammar, because Italian was my first language, it seems to be a problem when I write in it academically. So I have been procrastinating
Mhm.
and putting it off till this week. I've told myself, even if all I do is write one sentence a day, I am going to start on this thing. And I finally started, and I can't tell you it's easy for me, but I'm doing it.
Good for you. But you see how
And
that
I've
belief
written a
is the
page.
gatekeeper?
I've written
Yeah.
a page. I have a whole page now. People, I have written 500 words. So,
Go you.
but just saying, that has been haunting me now for a whole month before I started to do something.
So what if you, like one thing that you can do, because I'm sure that
Yes,
other
let
people
me
relate.
give me advice. Give me advice here. That's why we're sharing.
Sure. So if the belief is, this is challenging for me, like, or I'm not, instead of saying like, I'm not good at that, one better belief would be like, this is challenging, right? So,
Mhm.
because you can't lie to yourself. You can't be like, I can do anything because you know that that would be lying to
Yes.
yourself. And that's, that doesn't feel good either. So a better belief would be like, this is challenging for me. And then a belief after that can be is like, this is challenging for me, but I've been challenged in the past and I actually enjoyed it. Or maybe I can, and then you can look for evidence of that being true. And I don't know if it's true for you or not, but it's like, well, this is challenging for me, but I've done it before. And
Yes.
I've loved the way I felt when I finished it. Oh,
Yes.
okay. And
Yes.
so those are more exciting thoughts than, oh my God, I can't believe I have to write this. Why do I do this to me? Blah, 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 blah. It's just like, so you find a better belief that maybe it's just like a little better and work yourself up until the place where you're like excited. And that's going to
Okay.
push you forward. Does
Yes.
that help?
Yes. Because it's true. I've done a PhD. I've written an 85,000 word thesis, and I've written a whole book on my own. So I have done it before. I think
Yeah.
I just have post-traumatic stress from both those
So maybe, but
experiences.
so if that's the belief, right? Then you say, then it's like, okay, I've done this before and I did not enjoy it. And I'm afraid that I'm going to feel that way again. Okay.
I am afraid, okay, yes, you are on the right track, because when both of those came to the end, the work was done, I had pushed myself so hard that I was not in a good place physically, mentally, and emotionally. I drove myself really hard, and I had to sacrifice a lot to get that
Mm.
work done. And so I think I'm still overcoming. There's still a part of me that's still overcoming some of that. Yes.
Yeah. So if you know that, which is amazing, right? Because it's hard to get that awareness. But if you start questioning your thoughts and get to that belief and start understanding that that belief is, it's like, okay, well, you can create a new belief that this time I'm going to write an academic paper, but I don't want it to be like last time. So I'm going to try something different. And you start getting curious about it. And you're like, I wonder what I could do to make this experience better and make it like a game. It's like, I wonder if I only write for 1 hour as soon as I wake up, maybe that'll make a difference. I don't know. I
Mm.
wonder. And then you try that and maybe that doesn't work. And it's like, well, I wonder if I just like write without it being academic speak and then get somebody else to edit it for me. I wonder if that would work. And you start that word starts opening you up to different possibilities and to
Mm.
different opportunities, to different ways of viewing that belief that you're like, well, no, I'm just, like I'm just not good at that.
Yes. You're giving me ideas, and I kind of had those thoughts anyway. So I think I'm on the right track. I'm not doing so badly. But let's address our the singing voice community.
Mhm.
Let's put forward a scenario for the singing voice community here. And one thing that people talk a lot about in our community is stage fright or
Mm.
performance anxiety. So what would you say to someone who has a fear of getting up on stage? And it could be speaking or singing. And look, I didn't even know performance anxiety was a thing until I started working with dancers who I was teaching a certificate for. It was performing arts, and these incredible dancers who could kick their legs up like this, who was so strong, and they'd be in these skimpy outfits and they would shake everything they had to shake, but ask them to sing and they would curl up and cry. And for a lot of people that, and for me, my fear, I mean, it's unbelievable now, but I couldn't speak on stage. And I would not be very confident getting up and saying a word. I could sing till the cows came home, but getting up and speaking was something that I struggled with. So what is it about using our voice? What is it about performance anxiety or stage fright? What can you say to those people?
Sure. And I have I'll preface it by saying, like, I have a little bit of experience with this, from being a speaker, but also both of my kids are musicians and they've been performing since they were this big.
Excellent.
Yes. And, I don't want to say that the thought is not real, because it is a thought and it is a feeling, right? And I don't want to ever underestimate that. But who gets to think those thoughts?
You
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you get to, if your thought is, oh my gosh, what if I mess up? Oh my gosh, I have stage fright, or oh no, I could never do that because blah blah blah. If those are the thoughts that you're continuously feeding yourself, then that belief is going to make that experience miserable for you every single freaking time, because that thought is coming up.
Yes.
So, and I understand that there's emotion, right? And I understand that fear is sometimes visceral. But one thing that I like to do, is one tool is like when you say, is like, I am afraid. What you're really saying is that you are the definition of fear. Like, if I were to look up in the dictionary afraid, I would find your picture, because it's like every cell in your body, that's what you're telling me, right? I am afraid. So one way to control that emotion is to get it out of you. And you can say, it's like, I feel fear, but I can feel fear. I can feel joy. I can feel enthusiasm. I can feel, and like, a feeling is already not a definition of who I am, but it's outside of me. So if you can notice, it's like, oh, I'm feeling fear. You still have your thoughts that you can control to work with that fear. Right. And then one level, the next ninja level is saying, is like, there is fear. So now I'm not necessarily, I'm like, I am fear. I'm feeling fear. Now you can be like, there is fear. Fear is over there, and I'm choosing to engage with it right now. But I have the power to not do that. Right. And then
wow, I've not heard this before.
Ooh, good.
So separating yourself. What about if you were to name it? Like, just when you say, you put it over there. So what if you were to call your fear Fred? And I'm going to put Fred over there. I choose to engage with Fred, but Fred is not a part of me.
Exactly. We do that all the time, right? And so first there's this saying, is like, name it to tame it, right?
Oh,
so
okay.
Right. So once I understand, oh, this feeling that I'm having, it's called fear. So now it's already taking it out, because if not, you're like, and like, you're not, like, so you're just like, okay, I'm feeling fear. And yes, you can have fear be a person, you can have fear be a location, a situation, whatever. And you can have confidence be that too. And you can and then you can decide who you're going to engage with. Like, personifying those emotions is a great tool because then you're talking to something outside of you instead of embodying it.
I choose to make fear my friend. So because I always have a little bit of nervous energy, whether you want to call it anxiety, but before I need to speak or perform, or in the early days, when I first started this podcast, before an interview, I would have all this kind of anxiety and a little bit of fear. But I chose to make it my friend. And I would say to myself, this anxiety or this nervous energy, I'm going to turn it into a positive, and it's going to make me more alert, more engaged. I'm going to turn it into a positive rather than a negative. And
so there's a great word. Yes. So I feel, there is, the last level is I get to feel this because I get to be here performing in front of this audience. There's so many people that wish they could do this and they can't, but I get to be here. So it's like, I get to interact with fear because I get to do all these amazing things. So 100% is like, you have to bring it and you make these things your superpower, right? Fear is always going to exist at some level. Discomfort, challenges, yucky. There's always going to be a part of that. So once you understand that, it's like, oh, there it is. That's that's what we're dealing with today. All right, Fred, let's go.
Yeah, Fred, you and I are friends today.
Yeah, like, it's like let's go. I'll take you out for ice cream after this. Just help me out here.
Yeah, I need to make Fred my friend when I'm writing for that book chapter.
Yep.
I need to sit him beside me and say, come on, Fred, give me that energy. Let's turn this into a positive.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I know it sounds silly, but you are in control of your thoughts. So you can 100% do that. If that is what you feel is going to help you get the fear outside of you and engage with it in a productive way, amazing, right? You go, you do that. And we all and there's so many tools out there, and some people will relate to some more than others. And that's why it's great to just learn, because then you're going to find, just like when I was getting sober, right? You're going to hear things from different people and take those and create your own set of beliefs that are going to be more helpful to you.
Yes, because we are all different and we all respond to different things. You can't apply the same set of tools to everybody. And that's the same even in my industry as a singing teacher. What works for one student isn't going to work for another. So we have to keep finding, digging through the toolbox till we find the right tool that's going to work for that person. Exactly. I love that you address so many different misconceptions and put things into perspective. And I have a set of questions based on some of the misconceptions that I've seen you speak about. Okay. And this is one, I'm going to start with one, and I totally can relate to most of these. And this is one where you feel that you're on a treadmill. And many people have this attitude of, my life will change when this happens, or I will be happy when. And people are never happy in the now, and they're always looking for the next thing that they think is going to fulfill their lives. How does that happen, and where do we start doing the work to fix that?
So first is understanding there is no when. When we'll never get here, because as humans, we're always wanting to learn and grow and expand. So if you buy it's like, oh, I'll be, when I have a house of my own, then I'm going to be happy because I'm sick and tired of this place, blah, 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 blah. And then you get a house, but the garden has a brown patch or does whatever. It's like, well, I mean, I love my new house, but I'll really be happy when I can sit and see the garden and it's going to be beautiful. Then I'll really be happy. Then you fix the garden and then you're like, but it's so hot. I'm going to do a swimming pool over here. When I have my swimming pool, then I'll really be able to enjoy this house. And it keeps going and going. So you're never going to be happy. So happiness shouldn't be tied to a result. I tie happiness to effort, to the process,
I
right?
love process.
Yes. So I'm like, I'm in the process of getting my house. How fun. It's going to be great when I have it. But right now, I went house shopping and I saw two houses that I liked.
Mhm.
Why isn't like that's in the moment, right? This is what you're doing. And it's like, ooh, that's moving me forward to my goal. So you should always have a goal, but notice all the little steps that you take between, the 500 words that you wrote. Celebrate that. Because that is what's going to give you the mojo and the enthusiasm to keep going. But there is no when. When we'll never get here.
So is this because, does this come from within ourselves, or is it an extrinsic thing because we are comparing ourselves to other people? So we see what other people are doing and we think, oh, you know what? I really need to do that because that person's doing it, or their life looks way better than mine. Does it come from that as well?
It could, and we, every time we compare, I call it compare and despair, so, and there's three ways that we despair. If you have 5 minutes, like this is a great lesson. So one way that we compare and despair is that we compare our inside to somebody else's outside. Instagram, right? It's
Oh,
not real, but
we know.
like, but so now you're comparing how you feel to somebody else's outside. You will always lose, no matter what. The second way that we do it is that, like, you see Mary, and Mary is super smart. She works for like the space agency and she does like all kinds of physics and like incredible. And Johnny's this amazing dad, and he's always there for his kids. And, like he's just like incredible.
Mm.
And then there's Jenny, and Jenny cooks like a chef. And she's always eating like these most amazing plates. And and so what you're doing is that you're getting the best aspect of one person and comparing it to all of who you are, right? So
So true.
yeah. So there's nothing to say, and it's not about putting the other person down. It's not about saying it's like,
No.
oh yeah, she's really smart, but like she just got a divorce. It's not about that. It's about saying it's like, wow, she's really smart, and you can be inspired by them, but you don't have to compare your whole life to that, because even Jeff Bezos has issues and has problems and has things that he's not good at. But we don't look at that. We look at how much money is in his bank account, and we're like, oh my God, he's a billionaire, and here I am struggling to pay rent.
That's so true because we look at the worst of ourselves, is what
Mhm.
you're saying, the whole of ourselves, and there are the good and the bad. And we're
Mhm.
comparing to one aspect of someone's seemingly perfect life, not realizing that they need Fred as well.
Exactly. And they
Everyone
have
needs
them,
Fred.
and everybody has it. To think that somebody doesn't have Fred and doesn't, like it's not true, period,
Mm,
categorically.
mhm.
And then the other way that we compare and despair is our chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 11. So when I was, if I were to compare myself to Tony Robbins, like he's been doing it since he was 10. Like I've been doing it for 2 minutes
Mhm.
comparatively. And am I ever going to be that? Probably not. But it doesn't, like, I can't compare, or my clients is like, oh, but you know so much. It's like, yeah, I've been studying this for like 10 years. You've been studying it for like 1 week that you've been in my course. Of course, you're not going to be where I am. Right.
Yes,
So
yes.
always paying attention to where you are in your journey and respecting that, because there's enough space for everybody to be successful in everything. You just you just
100%.
you just go and do your thing.
100%. So what you're saying is that we really just need to put things in perspective.
Yeah. And be inspired. Like be inspired
Ah,
by someone else's success, not
yes,
jealous. Right?
yes, yes.
Because when you compare and you fall short, then it brings up envy and jealousy and like, oh, well, like wish da 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 da.
Mm,
Why? Just
mm.
because like, and then we put them down to make ourselves feel better. It's like, oh yeah, but did you see that she blah 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 blah, right? So instead
Did
of
you
doing that,
see? Yeah, did you see that?
yeah, like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Did you hear what happened to that person?
Right. And you want to bring them down to make yourself feel better. So instead, it's like, wow, she's really nailing it. Like, I wonder what I can learn from her. Like, I wonder if she'll help me cook. Like, I'm a horrible cook. It's like, I wonder if she can help me figure out how to solve this cooking thing that I've got
Mm,
going on. Be inspired by other people's
mm.
successes. Doesn't mean like their success has nothing to do with you.
And that is so liberating to feel that way, isn't it? Because that's a lot of baggage you've got to carry around to have that kind of looking for faults in other people or that jealousy. Like, that's a lot of work.
It is. And it's unproductive. And guess
Yeah.
what? They don't have a clue. So
And
it's
they
like
don't care. No
it's
one
like
cares.
you're eating poison expecting the other person to die, right? Like you're
Mhm,
poisoning yourself expecting that that's going to change something about them, and they're just being
mhm,
them.
mhm.
So that's how I like to see it.
I just want to talk a little here. We're going to segue because you work with children as well and you have some thoughts on parenting. We have a lot of people who listen to this podcast who too are parents themselves. And but how much of this way of thinking comes from our childhood? Either it's been shaped by what we heard our parents talking about, or is it something that we experience trauma that shapes our way of thinking? Where does all this baggage come from?
I think it comes from everywhere, right? From our parents, it comes from our culture, from our society, from the books that we read, the TV shows that we watch. And I think our parents did that. Like my parents did the best they could.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing the best that I can with my kids. I know
Yes.
they're going to end up with issues, right? But I don't know what exactly I'm going to say at what time of their life and maybe it was like this one thing that I said that they grabbed onto and
Mm-hmm.
that's it, like that's the belief that they're going to have. And I don't even know what that is. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as parents, we have to just like, it's not going to be perfect. We're going to mess up our kids in one way, shape, or form, and that's okay. Like they're going to get over it. But also giving them permission to struggle. I think nowadays our tendency as parents is to jump in too quick to solve their problem. And like, I work a lot in sports, so it drives me bananas that everybody gets a trophy, you know.
Me too.
I'm
What
like,
is that?
why?
My
Yes.
my grandchildren play sports. They play football and different types of football. They play tennis and they're 7 and 9 and there's no winners. There's never a winner. So what is that? I mean, is there no celebrating a victory anymore, or is it because they're not wanting to highlight a loss? And I mean, isn't life, aren't you always going to be in situations where you get the job or you don't? You
Yeah.
get that audition or you don't? I mean, how are we empowering children if they're not being taught to fail?
100%. And also like that definition of failing, like not coming in first place in a soccer tournament or in a football tournament doesn't mean that you suck. Doesn't mean that you're a
No.
failure. It just means that you lost a game.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yes.
So, but if we don't allow them to build that muscle, then they won't have the resilience so that when later they don't get that job or they don't get that audition, they're going to fall apart because they haven't built that muscle. And little kids, like you don't have to do anything to be loved, right? A child is loved just because they exist. But so I think sometimes we equate them winning with us loving them. Like if we see them sad, it means that we're not protecting them or that it's going to harm their self-esteem. We're harming them by not allowing them to feel the feelings, because once you have the feeling of Fred, then you can name it, then you can work with it, then you can grow with it. But if we never get to experience it, what the hell are we going to do as adults?
Yes. But how can, sometimes success, if you feel that you've been successful, whatever that looks like in whatever realm that is, and you experience that feeling and those endorphins and everything else that you experience when you have that feeling in your body, it wants you to have that more.
Mm-hmm. And that's motivation. But if you
Yes.
have that every single time, you will not be motivated. It'll
Mm,
just be normal. It'll just
mm,
be what it is. So the reward should be with the effort, not with the result.
mm,
So if I, for example, I'm like, okay, I'm going to win my neighborhood 5K. And I have trained for 6 months and I ate like the right way and I go to bed at the right time and I'm ready to win that race. And then Usain Bolt shows up. I'm not going to win that race. It doesn't matter what, like, I can't compete with Usain Bolt. So if my success only comes from some external validation, I'm in for a rough ride. If
mm,
my success comes as, okay, who is the person that I became as I showed up for this challenge? Now we're talking.
mm.
And that same feeling of like, yes, you can get it from a training run or you can get it from a race. You can get it from nailing a song in your studio because you finally got it right. And you can get it from performing in front of 1 million people. You don't only get that sense of like, yeah, when it's the big stage. You get it every, like you can get it every time.
Mm.
But if you get it, or not every time, you can get it on the way. But if you don't know what the opposite of it, if you don't know what, like your voice cracking, and I'm guessing, right? Like if you don't know
Yes.
what your voice cracking in in a rehearsal, if you don't know what that is, you'll never realize how cool it is and how special it is when it doesn't crack.
Yes, I love it when my students have a bad rehearsal
Mm,
because I feel like they've learnt something. And it means that, come on, you know what? A little bit more work to be done here. And you're
yeah,
better off to do it now than when you're on stage. You know,
exactly.
learn from this. Or I talk about peaking at the right time. So, for example, I had a student yesterday who has been doing remarkable work. And in her last exam, in her singing exam, received 100%.
Mhm.
Like her performance was brilliant. And she is potentially heading for that. But you can become complacent.
Mhm.
And, you know, going along, doing really well. And she had a lesson yesterday that did not go the way it was meant to go for her, in her eyes. And I said to her, you know why that happened? I said, this is great. This happened now because we don't want you peaking now. We want
Mm,
you peaking in 5 weeks' time.
mm.
And
Yeah.
I think this is good for you because it's going to, you've hit a roadblock here. So the next 4 weeks, you're going to spend rehearsing and not being complacent.
Yeah. And I agree. And I remember my kid, I don't know, he must have been in the third grade or something, and he had a solo, a guitar solo, and he totally messed it up. Like, and it was like in front of a whole lot of people. And no, he was singing. That's what it was. He was trying to sing a song and he's more of a guitar player. So it was already out of his comfort zone and he forgot the words. I don't know, like he was 8. Um, and and so at first he shied away from being on the stage, and then eventually he wanted to do it more than he was afraid of doing it. But he had
Mm.
like, and then he got back up on the stage, and then he lost that fear of completely messing up because it happens. And he performs so much that of course there are going to be times that you don't nail it, like when you're
Yes.
like they used to perform every Monday night at a hotel in this town that we lived. They were in middle school, like of course like you're going to get a chord wrong, and then he just keeps going as if nothing had happened because
That's,
now he's
yes.
built
Yes.
he's built that skill because he has failed he has quote unquote failed in the past. So
Yes.
it's important.
Yes. Christina, this has been a wonderful discussion. Is there anything further you'd like to add to this? Is there something that we haven't spoken about that you feel is important to touch upon?
No, I'll leave you with this thought, like life happens to you. There are challenges. There are things that, like your husband dying or my husband dying or war or systemic injustice, like those things aren't fair. They're not right, but they happen to us. But only we get to decide what we do with that. Only we get to decide how we react to the life that happens to us, whatever that life is. And that is power. And if you've learned anything in this hour that we've been together, is that you can control, like once you get a hold of that line of being able to control your thoughts, you can change anything in your life.
So true. We have a choice is probably the language that I personally use. And we all have our own language or descriptors. But I always think, we can't control other people, and we can't control situations, but we can control how we react. And we have a choice in that reaction.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do, Cristina, is we're going to share the links to your book, to all the information. So if people want to find you, your programs, this has been truly a beautiful interview with you. I feel like it's been a chat with an old friend. I don't even feel like it was an interview. It was just a wonderful way to spend a morning with you.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you.
No,
I
thank you.
appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. And I hope our listeners got as much out of it as what I did. There were so many pearls of wisdom. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate
and
that.
well done to you that where you are at now in your life, and you are sharing your experiences in the positive.
Yeah, that's what we're trying. Thank you so much for having me and for giving me an opportunity to share my message with your audience. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, see you, Cristina.
Mhm.
Bye.
Bye.